Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. Talking Constitution here. Andy McCarthy talking about the fact that all spending appropriations must begin, according to the Constitution, in the House of Representatives. The federal government cannot spend a dime that the House does not appropriate, and the House has not appropriated any money for Obamacare. Therefore, no money can be spent today legally, constitutionally, to implement Obamacare. Now, another issue is this whole mandatory spending. Hey, it's mandatory, nothing we can do. Social Security is mandatory. Medicare is mandatory. Obamacare is mandatory. But he says this, McCarthy says it is a black letter law that a prior Congress cannot bind the present Congress. And this is an absolute true fact. If a prior Congress could bind the actions of a current Congress, you never could have repealed Don't Ask, Don't Tell. We would have been told, hey, it's the law of the land, deal with it. But they didn't. They said, no, the actions of a prior Congress cannot put any kind of restraints on a current Congress. That's why laws can be amended, laws can be repealed, laws can be introduced. It's why budgets have to be formulated every year because the actions of a prior Congress cannot bind the actions of a current Congress. Prior law's designation of Obamacare spending as mandatory cannot compel the current Congress to fund it as part of continuing resolution legislation, nor does it alter the Constitution's command that all spending in that continuing resolution must originate in the House. So anybody tries to say it's mandatory, we can't do it, this is a black letter law, which means it's the law of the Medes and Persians. The actions of a prior Congress cannot bind the actions of a current Congress. That's why you can repeal legislation. That's why you can introduce new legislation. So that's just crazy talk from a constitutional standpoint. Last paragraph, the American people do not want Obamacare, and the representatives closest to them have not voted to spend people's money on it. According to the Constitution, that should be the end of the matter. Now let's grab clip one, President Obama, then we'll go to the phones, 888-589-8840. This is President Obama talking with Steve Inskeep.
And
what can you offer?
If we, Steve, when you say, what can I offer, I shouldn't have to offer anything. They're not doing me a favor by paying for things that they have already approved for the government to do. That's part of their basic function of government. That's not doing me a favor. That's doing what the American people sent them here to do, carrying out their responsibilities. I have said consistently that I'm always happy to talk to Republicans and Democrats about how we shape a budget that is investing in things like early childhood education, rebuilding our roads and bridges, and putting people back to work, growing our economy, making sure that we've got the research and development we need to stay at the cutting edge, and that deals with some of our long-term debt issues. But we're not going to accomplish those things if one party to this conversation says that the only way that they come to the table is if they get 100% of what they want, and if they don't, they threaten to burn down the house.
Well, let me ask you the question. President Obama says we're not going to accomplish these things if one party to this conversation says the only way they come to the table is if they get 100% of what they want, and if they don't, they threaten to burn down the house. Well, who is the one demanding 100% of what he wants? That would be President Obama. So therefore, according to his own logic, who's the one that's threatening to burn down the house? That would be President Obama. Who's the one that's shutting down the federal government? That would be President Obama, because he's the one that's saying, hey, if I don't get 100% of what I want, which is a clean bill to fund every part of government, then I'm not going to play ball. And the Republicans, meanwhile, they wanted to repeal Obamacare, couldn't do it, so they negotiated, they compromised by going with a defunding Obamacare bill. That didn't work. Senate wouldn't accept it, so they compromised again. They proposed a bill that would simply delay Obamacare for a year. Senate didn't accept that. So now they are proposing that we just delay the individual mandate for a year. That's not acceptable. So the reality is the Republicans have shown a consistent willingness to negotiate, to adjust, to make changes in the legislation. It is President Obama that will not negotiate. He's the one that's threatening to burn down the House. Well, let's go to the phones. Let's go to, let's go to Joyce in Geronimo, Oklahoma. Joyce, welcome to Focal Point. What's on your mind?
Well, first of all, I want to suggest to you that the federal government also should not be in charge of health care. That should be the state's prerogative.
Absolutely.
As well as education.
Absolutely.
The second thing I'd suggest to you is if the president thinks there's only one party, and that probably must be the Congress, that's not behaving, he has to blame himself for not behaving because that one party needs him to discuss things, to settle things.
Mm-hmm.
But if you happen to call him, the White House, you will be told, is closed because it's shut down because it's not being financed. So if you were really concerned about your Obamacare or your affordable care, you would definitely be trying to do something to speak with Congress and say, hey, I'd like your idea about postponing things for a year because I'm having trouble getting people registered. If that was the case, he would be in the Congress now speaking to Speaker Boehner and saying, hey, people, please don't waste time giving information, your personal information, to people who want to sign you up because it's not working. We need time to get everything set up. However, he doesn't. And I'm thinking the reason he doesn't is he does not respect we, the people. The fact is that if you happen to have interest in your own areas of interest and not in your people's area of interest, it's quite logical that you would suggest that they are just too stupid to understand what's going on, and they must rely on you for everything they need. And if you want to treat people like they're second-class people, you call them the dhimmis. The dhimmis are a conquered people, especially Christians and Jews, who are part of the area, live in the area that you want to rule. However, they have no right to rule themselves. As the dhimmis, they are second-class, unprotected citizens, but they must pay a fine every year annually, and that's called a jizya. A jizya is a tribute to those wonderful people that are taking care of you after they have conquered you. And if you don't pay the fine, then you could have to go to jail, perhaps, or go to Congress. I mean, go to a judge.
Well, that's an interesting template that Joyce is talking about there, and thank you for the call. What she's talking about in a Muslim, where Muslim is in the ascendancy and Muslims control the government, then Christians are what are called dhimmis, which she's exactly right, second-class citizens who have no rights and must pay a submission tax. It's called a jizya. It's a submission tax. It's basically protection money. You pay us this tax, even though you're a citizen in this country, you live in this country, you got to pay us this tax, and we promise we will not let people beat you up. It's no different than what the mafia does. And Joyce is suggesting maybe that's what we've got going on here. We've got the ruling class elite in Washington, D.C. They're like the Muslim caliphate, and we are the dhimmis. We are the second-class citizens. We are the ones that have no rights. And furthermore, we have to pay this jizya. We have to pay this submission tax in order to keep the government from throwing us in jail. It's a kind of an interesting little parallel. Let's go to Robert, Lafayette, Indiana. Robert, welcome to Focal Point. What's on your mind?
Hey, I like all your work and all you do and all the hard work you do for Friday. And I actually work at McDonald's, which, they're actually dropping insurance for. They made insurance for the people who make the lowest amount of wages, minimum wage, and because of Obamacare and the Affordable Health Care Act, which is a joke, they're dropping insurance for those who make the least amount of money. And also, the Indiana Department of Insurance said premiums for people in Indiana will go up to 72%. Their premiums will rise by up to 72%. So it's not affordable, and it kills other insurance programs that are already in place and that already work.
Well, Robert, stay on the line just for a second because I want to close the loop on this with you, because this came up at the very beginning because McDonald's was one of the companies that went to Obama and said, we need a waiver. We need a waiver because we are providing these insurance policies to our part-time workers. They are low cost. They're called mini-med programs, so there's a cap on how much the insurance company has to pay out, but it's affordable. It does protect them in case of some major medical event. Well, now those programs are illegal. Obamacare says you can't offer a stripped-down model of insurance, even if that's what people want, even if that's all they can afford. Every insurance policy has to have all of these mandated coverages in it, and it drives the cost up to the point where McDonald's cannot offer insurance to their own employees anymore. And Robert, I guess the question for you, you're working at McDonald's, getting started out in your career path and all that kind of thing. And it seems to me this is a classic case where it's the little guy that's getting hurt by Obama. It's the little guy that's getting drilled to the floor by Obama.
And not only that, but I'm relatively young. People who are younger don't really have to worry about all these different medical expenses or an all-in-one package. And at least from my experience, I don't need something that's an all-in-one either. So not only am I getting hurt, but I'm wasting money.
Yeah. All right, Robert. That's exactly right. I appreciate the call, Robert. Thank you for that. You know, and this whole thing is predicated on fleecing guys like Robert. That's the thing that just irritates me no end. The only way Obamacare works is if the government, at the point of a gun, backs Robert into a corner, takes money out of his wallet and says, look, this is not for your medical care. This is for people who are senior citizens, people who are at the end of their earning life. This money is for them. You'll get your turn in 30 or 40 years. Meanwhile, we have to rip you off to give your money to other people for their health care. It's the only way it works. Focal Point AFR Talk.